Hi, I'm Linda Brault. I am work for WestEd, Center for Child and Family Studies. I'm joined by my colleague Cindy Yarstein-Kerslake, who also works for WestEd, and Reagan Binder, who works for the Ventura County Office of Education. We're here today to talk to you about changing the world, some of the work we've been doing through Beginning Together, caring for young children with disabilities in inclusive settings. So this is really focused on the kind of pursuit of inclusion in early childhood in California. So our primary partners for this have been the Early Learning and Care Division of the California State Department of Education, as well as WestEd Center for Child and Family Studies. So inclusion, as obvious from this conference, has been a focus for quite a while. And yet states across the country continue to sort of struggle as they try to look at preschool services in quote unquote regular settings. And what's important to understand is there's not a set number of settings that we look for, as opposed to the K-12. When we go to the K-12 inclusion, we're looking at the classroom settings. In early childhood, it's any program that would include a majority of children who are typically developing. So here's a list of possible kinds of programs, which includes, family child care, Head Start, transitional kindergarten, preschool classes, private kindergartens, private preschools, and other child development centers or childcare. And in 2015, it says recent, I guess that's not recent anymore, but it's still good. There was a policy statement that came out from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the U.S. Department of Education that really talked about the importance of inclusion of children with disabilities in early childhood program. So in this presentation, anytime I say policy statement on inclusion, the quotes came from this particular document. And it's a really worthwhile document to read and explore. So this is the definition they offer of inclusion, and I'm going to read it because I think it's really comprehensive. So inclusion in early childhood programs refers to including children with disabilities in early childhood programs together with their peers without disabilities, holding high expectations and intentionally promoting participation in all learning and social activities, facilitated by individualized accommodations, and using evidence-based services and supports to foster their development, cognitive, language, communication, physical, behavioral, and social emotional, friendship with peers, and sense of belonging. This applies to all young children with disabilities, from those with the mildest disabilities to those with the most significant disabilities. So that's a pretty good definition, and it is certainly something that we are wanting to support and encourage. There's also a letter that came out from our Department of Education that was done jointly between the Special Education Division and the Early Learning and Care Division that reaffirms the expectation for access to inclusive early learning and care opportunities. So it's something to also be aware of, that this is supported from the top. In, what year was that? 2018, I think. There was some state money appropriated for some early inclusive early education expansion program and an inclusive early child care pilot, which is now known as the Inclusive Early Learning and Care Coordination Program. That was, this money was set aside to help increase access to inclusive programs. So they have a number of required and recommended trainings that are available, the required being on the left and the recommended being on the right. And you'll notice that Beginning Together is one of those recommended trainings. So why Begin Together? Well, we know that what is good for all children is good for children with disabilities. One of the tasks I've been working on in the last 20 years is looking at increasing the quality of childcare settings for all children. And we know that a high quality setting is really best for children who have disabilities. Then we also know that all children deserve quality group care, that everybody deserves that. And attitudes and confidence can be shaped through experiences. So one of the things we really want to address in any training that we do is looking at how can we help people feel more confident and competent in the skills that they have, and how can we help them look at their attitudes towards persons with disabilities. And finally, together we're better. We certainly believe that. So we have, over the last couple of years, held 3 Beginning Together Institutes that were focused on inclusion facilitation. And what we invited was people to come as a team, and the teams included early childhood and special education partners, as well as decision makers from the community. And we worked with them to build a vision for inclusion as a team, whether that was a team within a community, within a county, within a region. We started talking about and began to address some systems change issues as a team. We introduced them to a systems change model, and we used a tool called appreciative inquiry to really help them focus their energies on what works and what we can do more of. Then we provided some trainings as training for trainers so that they could turn around and use these trainings in their communities. So we have a training on setting the stage for inclusion, when concerns arise, meaning when you're worried about a child's development. We had one focused around the resource Inclusion Works, which is a book out of the Department of Education. We also had a training around the book Building Blocks, which is a wonderful curriculum support for preschool children. And then we also provided inclusive strategies for infants and toddlers in group settings. So those topics were all given to members of the team for them to replicate and do back in their own communities. There also was a great deal of time spent over the 3 days in action planning as a team, letting them really think together about a variety of topics. And our basic theme is we want to change the world, because in truth, that's really what we're about. When people say, why inclusion? It's because we really want to look at a future where everyone's together. So in this case, we recognize that changing the world happens at a lot of different levels. We have people that were focused on inclusion for one child and family. So they were trying to help one child be successful in a setting, which would change the world for that child and family. Other people were really looking at making a classroom more welcoming and inclusive, which would change the world for all the children and staff in that classroom. You can also look at a whole site and change the world for several staff and children. Other people were taking a more district view or agency view so that they could be looking at a larger group. And of course, we know that if everybody makes these little changes, that's going to influence the inclusion world more broadly. So there are 2 approaches to organizational change, and the traditional way is kind of problem solving, and people will identify what are our barriers, what are our challenges, how can we get over those. But what we find is, just like with the kids, if you look for problems, you find and create more problems. So we wanted to adopt the newer way of leading change that is really known in organizational settings, looking at appreciative inquiry, which is if you look for success, you'll find and create more success. So here's kind of a comparison. The problem-solving method picks out what's wrong, what do we need to fix. So we talk about problems and symptoms, action plans, and intervention. It breaks things down into pieces and specialties so that there's kind of a fragmented response. It's slow. It takes a lot of positive emotion to keep going. And it assumes that organizations, I love this, are constellations of problems to be overcome. So it really sees a lot of issues there. Appreciative inquiry focuses on what is it that's working and what do we want to grow. It has new grammar. So instead of problems and symptoms, it's talking about what's true, what's good, what's better, what's possible. The problem focus implies that there's an ideal. And appreciative inquiry opens the box of what is that ideal? What are we aiming toward? And once we have that ideal, we look at an expanded vision to create some new energy. And it actually is much more energizing to people when they know what they're aiming for. And it assumes organizations are sources of infinite capacity and imagination. So when you think about the difference between constellation of problems to be overcome and sources of infinite capacity and imagination, which place would you rather work? So we also love this quote, no problem can be solved by the same consciousness that created it. We must learn to see the world anew. So appreciative inquiry, it focuses on what we want more of. Once we've decided what we want more of, then we can track what we're doing, fan it, encourage it. So here's some underlying assumptions. As we said, in every organization or system, something works. So if we can help people identify when things have gone well with a child with disabilities included in our setting, what has that looked like? When has it really worked? And then we want to look for those successes and create more. It's also a way of asking questions that influences the system in some way. And I'll give you some examples in a minute. So the language we use creates our reality. One of the sayings in appreciative inquiry is words create our worlds. So the appreciative inquiry process starts with a topic, whatever you want more of in the center. And then you define it. You really decide what to learn about it, and you commit to staying really positive. What are you looking for? Not what are you avoiding? From there, you start to discover. You interview people, you gather their experience, you value the best of what is. You then move to dreaming. So then we come up with a common image and an ideal. Then you try to design some innovative ways to create that future, and you start speaking of that future as though it exists. And then you deliver and sustain the change. So you innovate what will be. So what we did with our topic is we wanted inclusion into regular early childhood programs for preschool children with disabilities. It was actually for all children. We started with preschool. So in this case, inclusion is the center. So then we defined inclusion. Then we went through this whole process with the group in this institute to help them build a plan within their team. And then their plan, we wanted them to pay attention to a systems change process, because for every complicated problem, there is an answer that is short, simple, and wrong. So we wanted to look at managing complex change. This is something that some of you are familiar with. You start with the vision. You look at what are the incentives, what's helping it happen. You look at what skills are needed for people in order to accomplish the vision. You then look at what resources people need. And finally, you create that action plan. And with all those things in place, you end up getting some change. So what we introduced people to is this figure that shows if any one of those rainbow colored sources are missing, you end up with a different outcome. So if you're missing the vision, you get confusion. If you're missing incentives, you get resistance, or it takes a long time to change. If you're missing skills, you get a lot of anxiety. If you're missing resources, people get frustrated. If you're missing an action plan, then people are going off in all different directions. So we really tried to organize the whole institute around these complex change concepts so that we could help people identify what was missing, how could they find those pieces and build that complex change model. So Cindy is going to talk to you a little bit about our process.
So I want to introduce myself. I am Cindy Arstein-Kerslake, and I'm the coordinator of the Map to Inclusion and Belonging project, as well as the coordinator of the Inclusion Facilitator Community of Practice. And the California Department of Education has endorsed an Inclusion Facilitator certification process for the Institute and the work that surrounds it. And these are the requirements for certification. You need to attend an institute, the institute, conduct a training on one or more of the trainer topics, and either facilitate a meeting on one of the trainer topics or provide a consultation to support inclusion of an individual child or an entire program. And I just want to say that all of the counties that have participated have gone above and beyond those minimal requirements. They have created plans for implementing inclusion throughout their county in a very intentional way over the course of a year or 2 years. Can I see the next slide? There we go. So in order to support the potential inclusion facilitators, we have a community of practice, and we provide periodic webinars for the teams who have attended the Institute to share their progress, to reflect on what they've been doing and where they're going, and to hear all the other wonderful things that the other teams are doing. And the physical community of practice website holds the certification requirements, multiple materials, PowerPoints, videos, checklists, trainings, all of the resources that are shared by the counties, as well as the periodic updates and recordings of the webinars. So they have a multitude of resources at their disposal, as well as there's a really nice community that is supporting them as they implement inclusion. One of our most, we popped to that. Okay, so we have, we've already completed 3 institutes, one in the Bay Area, the Central Valley, and Southern California. We've had a total of about 250 total participants who may become inclusion facilitators. They represent 33 counties, and when they attend, most people who come as a team, and that's what we highly encourage. And the teams include superintendents and principals and managers and directors of early childhood education, special educators, coordinators, school psychologists, behavior specialists, and program specialists. So far, these are decision makers. So when they leave after they have attended the Institute, they are ready to go. They don't have to wait for anyone, to get anyone's approval. These folks know what they're doing. Anyway, so far we have had 23 people become certified inclusion facilitators. So one of the counties that has gone above and beyond the minimal requirements is Ventura County. And today we have Reagan Binder here to tell us just a little bit about what her county did.
Thank you for that introduction. So my name is Regan Binder. I'm from Ventura County, which is down south. In case you don't know, we're wedged between LA and Santa Barbara. And when we attended the first and actually sent another core group of people to the second Beginning Together training series. And upon returning from those trainings, we really hunkered down and got together to think about what was going to be our vision for the county. How are we going to move this work forward? And so we really took to heart the appreciative inquiry information that Linda shared earlier. We really reached out to partners in the county who we knew could help us formulate what our vision would be. And so currently our working vision is looks something like this. So for Ventura County, quality early learning and care means relationships, learning environments, and activities support all children's growth and development to prepare them and their family members for success in school and life. And we feel like it's a good core working vision for us in terms of pushing our work forward. And the result of what happened from that creation of a vision and bringing people together that we've experienced multiple accomplishments that we are super happy about. So first and foremost, we had 4 of our QRIS coaches, 3 early childhood program directors from local LEAs, and 1 special ed director attend the Beginning Together Preschool Inclusion Facilitator Training Institute. And that experience alone, bringing that core group of people together, is what pushed us forward. And in that, we were able to develop a 4-part professional development series based on not just the Beginning Together content, but also pulled in content from Program for Infant Toddlers, from Teaching Pyramid, from multiple supports, so that we could really build a foundation for all of the educators who work in this county with children who have been identified with special needs. Second, we found the documentary film, including Samuel, and we hosted an educator workshop and screening of that film to just really draw people into this other element, which is really the family piece and connecting with families to develop deep understanding of what their needs are and their experiences, so that we can really expand that in the county. We actually became a virtual host site for this conference, Santa Clara's Inclusion Conference, and we had about 30 educators come to the Ventura County Office of Ed and participate in that conference last year, which was really exciting and again propelled us forward. And then we hosted a family engagement workshop in partnership with Sandy Walters, who is a part of Linda's team and works for WestEd. So. And then finally, I think the thing that really set us in a great direction was we were able to create a countywide task team that worked with us to support and develop and steer this work in the county. And so as you can see, we basically were able to, through the task team, partner with our local planning council and create inclusive conversations embedded in those meetings. We were able to intentionally increase the levels of collaboration among SELPA and COE special education through meetings and events. We became active members of Help Me Grow, as well as some of the other task teams that are embedded within SELPA and special education. And then we were able to host some experts from our county and child care licensing, and Santa Clara County Office of Ed really supported us. We hosted them, invited them to our meetings, had them present on very specific information that was designed to increase and educate people's understanding of why inclusion was so important. And ultimately, the impact for us was that we've not only found we did have barriers in the beginning, and what we were finding is that we didn't get to break them all down, but we've certainly started to replace them. And so what I was saying is we replace them with bridges. And one of the examples for this is that we did a levels of collaboration survey at the beginning and end of our grant. So we found that at the beginning of the grant, people identified that they were maybe around 36% collaborating with each other in the county around inclusion. And at the end of this process, 18 months later, we were at almost 70% of collaboration. So we really built that muscle of working together, which is really important. We also did a readiness for inclusion survey, and those results showed that we basically needed to work on a couple of things. One of them was providing families with resources on inclusion and navigating their systems to support their children. And the other part that we found really needed a little bit more focus was professional development and our educators' alignment with state standards, competencies, and guidelines, and their understandings about the laws and regulations. And so we did the Beginning Together, Belonging Together 4-part professional development series. And at the end of that, we actually found that 26% of our educators felt more prepared to effectively teach children with special needs in their classrooms. So I will close with this 2 key highlights from our work. The development of these expansive partnerships and collaborations span not only our county, but our state and our nation. And this work has really allowed Ventura County to bring together a collective voice on the issue of inclusion, developing a shared vision for what could be, and laying the foundation for future implementation. So thank you all.
So Ventura County definitely made great strides in changing the world. And we are really excited about that. This is so much, the accomplishments have gone so far beyond what our expectations were for the Beginning Together Inclusion Facilitators Institute. I'm going to tell you about just a sample of things that the other county teams have done. For example, the Child Care Resource and Referral Group from San Diego YMCA, they had a really expansive set of goals, but one of the things that they, one of the biggest impacts is at the end, they decided to hire an inclusion facilitator specifically to support family child care providers because they'd had so much success. They provided trainings in English and Spanish for the child care providers based on the TOTs. They, one of the trainers overheard a training participant say, "I want to care for a child with a disability. I think I can do it now," based on what they had, the training that they had received and the support. Not only did they provide the training, but after the training, they provided weekly support groups for implementation, and that gave them the ability to carry through. In San Francisco, San Francisco was already doing many things in the area of inclusion. Support for Families Family Resource Center completed 200 support plans for individual children. And that's already kind of what they do, but what an impact to have 200 children who are included and supported. Fresno County Coalition, they were the largest group, and they had their own institute. So there were over 75 people from Fresno County, and they invited some of their sister counties. Tulare and Kings, I think, were also there. And they have countywide coordinated efforts on training and inclusion. And they hosted a huge inclusion conference in June to celebrate that. That was, of course, online. But one of the things that they noted as an impact is that all of the folks involved, we're talking about multiple school districts and the Family Resource Center and the Regional Center and county, various resource and referral agencies that all meet together regularly, and inclusion is always on the agenda. It is an ongoing part of the agenda. In addition to all the other wonderful things they're doing, they are sustaining their work. The next one, Quality Counts, California Regional Hubs. Several of the regional hubs came as part of their team. And El Dorado County region, that included El Dorado County and Sacramento, people up in Northern California. One of the great things that they did, there was this huge 2-page list of materials that they pulled together and gave to all of their schools, their programs, to facilitate modifications and resources to support inclusion. So they put together modification support kits with all sorts of tactile items as well as resources. And then in Butte County, they attended, the director of early childhood and the director of special ed attended together. And this was the first time that they had really ever talked to each other. And during the Institute, they became friends and developed a relationship and a vision. And this relationship really carried them through for the next year in collaborating in all sorts of ways and bringing other people, other organizations into this collaboration to focus on inclusion. And so that focus time just in being able to get to know one another was the key to their success. And they have many other successes as well to go along because of that relationship. And then in Tulare County, they always submitted the very longest plans, not plans, excuse me, accomplishments. And they did all their trainings in English and Spanish, and they feel like their biggest impact was inspiring family child care providers to feel like they could do it, that they now have confidence to take care of children with disabilities. They said they just didn't know how to do it before. And in Kings County, they are actually making structural changes. Early on, in January of 2020, they started their first inclusion classroom. It was 16 kids with disabilities and 16 kids without disabilities, and they co-taught. And they are in the process of actually building a new classroom that will house another inclusion classroom. And that's just one of their accomplishments, but that was a huge one. This was the only county that was actually involved in infrastructure, which is really, really exciting. Infrastructure with teachers and kids to go along with the inclusion, truly implementing inclusion. And then Orange County has done so many things. But they are, as far as I know, the only one that actually included an inclusion website. And so if you look at Orange, just Google Orange County and inclusion, I'm sure you'll find their website, which has all of their trainings and resources and all kinds of good ways to support inclusion. Then San Diego has also made great strides. They started right at the beginning by hiring an inclusion coordinator, and then doing all sorts of things to collaborate with other organizations in the county. And then they created I believe it's an 8-week online training on inclusion for everyone in the county to enjoy, and that was a very effective way to help the large number of programs and school districts in San Diego to get on board with inclusion. And there are so many more stories, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse. The other thing that I just wanted to introduce you to was the Map to Inclusion and Belonging website that holds all kinds of resources to support you in your inclusion efforts. So we did not get it set up so that we could actually take a look at the website. And I don't know that Linda wants to try to switch over to the actual website, but she could try if she wants. In the meantime, I will tell you a little bit about the website because we have quite a bit more time than we thought we would have. Oh, she's going to try. Okay, that'll be much more effective so that you'll so that we can actually take a look at all the features of the website. All right. So I see the website and I'm very excited about it. So this is MAP's homepage, and in order to get to MAP, you go to cainclusion.org. That's California. That's cainclusion.org, and there'll be there we go. There's beginning together, and there's Map to Inclusion in the middle, and then there's the teaching pyramid. And click on Map to Inclusion and Belonging. And we arrive at the home page. And Walking Up the Pyramid is a brand new website that was developed for reopening, so that as schools reopen, they can do their best to support the social and emotional development of not only, or the social and emotional well-being of teachers and students. And the Walking Up the Pyramid has strategies and resources that will help you with all of the levels of the teaching pyramid. And I believe it's helpful if you've gone through the teaching pyramid, or even if you haven't gone through the teaching pyramid. And so you can check that out. And maybe if we have time, Linda will spend a little bit of time actually going through that.
At some point.
I thought they were. I had intended to upload them. I'm not sure why they're not showing up. So I will work with the Inclusion Collaborative to make sure, because I did upload them as a PDF. So I don't know what's happened. Did you want to talk about this part, Cindy? The newsletters?
So did you want to talk? So we have a lot more time than we had considered. Do you
we
want
can have questions? I don't want to do Walking Up the Pyramid. We're doing that later. That's a whole nother workshop.
Okay, there's too much there to do. So I just wanted to say that I hope that you take a look at there's a rotating advertisement right there on the homepage of MAP. And over the past summer, actually since March, I have been busy gathering resources to support families and childcare providers and everyone who is involved in inclusion, specifically with a lens in supporting them during the time of COVID. And so there are 4 newsletters that are each focused on a different resources. And the most recent one is kind of a reflection of what different organizations or what different types of groups have done: early childhood, families, various childcare providers, what they've done to connect with families. And there's all sorts of wonderful resources that I've identified to support you in your work. I think the most recent, the August newsletter, is my favorite, and it has some personal stories related to MAP staff members and what they've done both professionally and personally over the past summer. And there's some great ideas for supporting children and families. And anyway, there's all kinds of things to explore there. And I think I'll just leave it at that. And we will make sure that our PowerPoint is posted.
I do want to let you know that the slides are available under the Sketch. So if you've logged into your Sketch and gone to this workshop, the slide deck is available.
Great. Okay.
So are there any other questions? We did go through this very quickly.
I don't see any more in the chat.
Well, we're here if you have the questions. We will be holding another Inclusion Facilitator Institute sometime this year. Obviously, we have to move it to a virtual format, and we're looking at how to do that. So we don't yet have the announcement, but it is something that we would highly, obviously, encourage people to do in teams. So if you're attending this and you're interested, you can certainly email beginningtogether@wested.org to get on the mailing list for the future announcements. And I think at some point we will also be putting up some of the county examples on the Beginning Together website so that we'll have some of those examples available for others to see.
Yes, we are definitely interested in putting together some kind of report that will be available to let the world know all of the wonderful accomplishments that have occurred in the past year, and hopefully they're continuing on in the next half of this year and in 2021 as we add another institute.
It certainly has been challenging with the COVID, because some of the children who have disabilities have not been able to be attending programs, even when some programs have been open, because they have additional risk factors. So we know socialization and inclusive practices are something that we have to keep a very strong eye on as we move through this pandemic. So we certainly are encouraging everybody to always be thinking about belonging, which is the other piece that we really like to focus on. And that is, what can we do to continue to keep families and children with disabilities in the group, however that happens. So certainly, again, if you have questions, just put them in the chat. We'd be happy to hear from you.
And if you have further questions about the BT Inclusion Institute or about the MAP website, please feel free to email beginningtogether@wested.org or map@wested.org, and we will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, everybody. Take this 10 minutes and center yourself.
Bye. Thank you.